Hello, this is Andrine, your Jewish American Priestess, and I'm coming to you today with a Hebrune reading for the month of May and that celebration of that midpoint between the equinox of spring and the solstice of summer, which is a special day in many, many cultures, including Judaism as well as Celtic cultures. It's known as Beltane. And so we're going to do a reading today. I brought some flowers from the grove. We have choke cherry and some red elderberry today. And I'm going to pull out 3 cards today from the Wildwood Tarot because I'm thinking a lot about being outdoors these days. And I've spent a lot of times outdoors. I'm trying to get out every morning and spend some time in the nature because it is just spectacular where I am as the spring comes into bloom. And whatever transition you are, this is a magical time of year. And we're going to pull out 3 cards today and talk about the month of May. We're going to do 3 separate readings. There's one. Woo! And as we do, we're going to put those timestamps below so that you will be able to just go straight to your reading. And then we'll do a 3 Hebrune reading for each of these cards. I'm going to pull out 3 cards today. Set these off to the side. And let's see what cards are coming out. The first one we have is the 8 of Arrows, Struggle, which is the 8 of Swords in the traditional tarot. 8 of Arrows. That's number 1. Number 2, we have the 4 of Arrows, also 4 of Swords, and it says Rest. And the 3rd card we have is the 9 of Bows, Respect. That's the 9 of Wands, traditionally. So take a moment to determine which of these 3 cards is calling to you today. We'll do a reading about the month of May. And we'll see you in your reading. All right, for those of you who chose card number 1, the 8 of Arrows, let's take a look at it. The 8 of Swords, 8 of Arrows is struggle. And here you can see in this card, we have this person who is dressed up in furs and surrounded by arrows that have hit the ground and broken around them. They're carrying a walking stick with them, and they're walking in this snowy time with the river barely visible through the snow. But they have a lantern that they are following, and they look a little bit alarmed, you can see. Interestingly, traditionally, the 8 of Swords is a card that speaks to struggles that are mostly in one's own mind. The traditional 8 of Swords is a person surrounded by swords and blindfolded, and they can't see their way out, but they aren't actually trapped. And in this card, I would say similarly, we have this person who is walking in the snow, but they do seem to have adequate clothing, which is great. They do seem to have arrows around them, but they also don't have any arrows in them. So all the arrows that have been shot at them have missed. So, and they are carrying a lantern, so they even have fire with them. So even though they are distressed and struggling, they seem to have the resources they need. And even the stream seems to be melting next to them. So it seems to be the central issue is this concern about being attacked, this concern about being out in the cold, about being lost possibly. And yet there is this ability to move forward, that this person does not seem to be actually physically wounded. They have a stream to follow, which is always a path that leads to somewhere. And they have the lantern to lead their way as well. So even though they're struggling, it looks like maybe spring is coming, that they aren't wounded, and that they are on a path to somewhere. So that's the first message I'm getting here. And we're going to set this off to the side, and we're going to pull out 3 Hebrunes today for the reading for the month of May. Let's see what comes out. At the top, we have the letter Dalet. In the center, we have the letter Tav. And at the bottom, we have the letter Vav. Okay. So, I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit. All right, starting out at the top, we have the letter Dalet, and the Dalet is a doorway. So, traditionally, the Dalet stands for a door, something that we are transitioning through. And I think that is the central theme we have here today, that there is some kind of transition that needs to take place. Something is opening up, and it is time to step through it. And those transitions can be very, very challenging. And so that would explain the struggle that this person is experiencing here in the card of the 8 of Arrows. The Dalet is a doorway, and it is a gateway, and it is humility. The word dal means poor. So there's some kind of humility that needs to happen in order to pass through this gateway. Dalet is the foundation of wisdom and foolishness in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, which speaks about all of the letters. Dalet is that binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness. So we have this concern, perhaps, about doing what is wise and avoiding what is foolish. And that's also a big struggle. And we are on the threshold of something new. And thresholds, again, are very challenging because we maybe don't know what is on the other side. I think about Dalet as corresponding to the traditional tarot card of death. And death is frightening because it seems like it's an end to a thing, but we don't know what's on the other side. It is a portal to something different that is coming through on the other side. So there are definitely challenges affiliated with this card, death, and with the letter Dalet. It is the letter that rules over the planet Mars in the Sefer Yetzirah. And Mars is known as sometimes a warlike planet, but it also can be protective. I see Dalet as being the letter that corresponds to the matriarch Rebecca, or Rivka, as she is known in Hebrew, in the Torah. She left her father's home and the doorway of his tent and moved into her mother-in-law's tent, Sarah, once she had passed away, and became this helper to her husband Yitzhak, who was troubled after the death of his mother. And she became a portal for Yaakov to enter into the world. Yaakov, whose later name was changed to Israel, the one who wrestles with God. And so the struggle is right there inside of her. She spoke of a struggle in her womb when Yaakov and Esau, the twins, were fighting within her. So she became that doorway, and she struggled, and I can see that in this figure in the card, that there's this struggle that is happening that makes it challenging to make the transition of whatever is coming up for the Dalet here. The Dalet is the number 4, so it has a certain amount of stability to it. It is representative of the 4 legs of a table, the 4 sides of a doorway, the 4 letters of the name of the divine, the Yud-He, Vav-He. And there is that binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness here. So that is our central issue here. Walking through that doorway, finding out what is the wise path here as we struggle on our journey. The center letter is the letter that represents what is our fear or challenge in the situation. Well, it seems like the situation is already pretty challenging, but the letter Tav is the final letter of the alphabet. So there's this additional fear or challenge here. Tav represents that completion, something that is a stamp or a seal. It is the final letter, so it is like a signature. It's like, this is done. So there may be some concern over an ending, something that is coming to an end, or how things are going to turn out. There's some fear, there's some challenges around that. There's a mystery there that we don't quite understand. The Tav rules over the moon in the sky, and the moon is affiliated with mystery. It's affiliated with the unknown. Going back to the matriarch Rebecca, she was the sister to Laban, who was the father of both Rachel and Leah, who ended up then later marrying Yaakov, Jacob. And Laban is the word that we use for the whiteness of the moon, Levana. It's the same root. So we have this moon here that is similarly related to the Dalet. The moon, who is the mysterious, the unknown. In my correspondences with the traditional tarot, Tav corresponds to the moon card, the unconscious, the intuition, and the shadow self. So the challenge here is not knowing how things are going to turn out. We walk through this doorway, we don't know how it's going to go. The Tav speaks also to judgment. Some say that it looks like a Dalet and a Nun together, which would spell out Din or Dina or Dan, which means judgment. So there may be some fear of an ending or some kind of final judgment that is coming. And although it is the final letter, my correspondences to the patriarchs and matriarchs, I assign Tav to Avraham. And the reason for that is because the patriarch Avraham is the one who sealed so many covenants with people along his journey. He left his home, again, leaving through a transition out into the world when he was told, go find yourself. And along the way, he discovered so many different names for the divine, and he would set up an altar to them, and he would make a pact. He would dig a well and make a pact with whoever the landholder was and make a covenant. And so he was one who was constantly making all these covenants, making these seals with folks to unite people and to unite the names of the divine to one name. So whatever transition you're going through here, there is this fear about the unknown, about the coming to an end of a thing, and possibly judgment that is coming up for you. And what we can know about that is there is a finality. It is the final letter of the word emet, which means truth, which consists of the first letter, the central letter, and the final letter of the alphabet, emet, meaning truth. So it is the finality of truth. And maybe we're a little afraid of truth right now. But as we walk through with this struggle, we can know that the transition is imminent and we need to step through. And our outcome letter in this is the letter Vav. And I love that because Vav is the letter that means connection. It is the letter that is affiliated with the month of ER, which is where we are right now in the calendar, the month of May in the Gregorian calendar, but we transitioned into ER last week. So we have this nowness that is right here and this connection piece. Vav is a tall, straight, standing person with a slightly bowed head. That little piece of humility is there as well. And it appears to me like a taproot that dwells deep into the earth and yet reaches up with hope toward the sky. So there's connection here. It's connection with the divine, connection with yourself. and connection with another human being. It is this letter that corresponds to the 6th day of creation, which means things are almost at a finish, and that's what we're seeing with the Tav, that things are almost to an end here. The Vav is a peg or a hook. In the Paleo Hebrew, it looked more like a hook or a peg. And that peg and those hooks are the connecting pieces. In the tabernacle, in the wilderness, we had this tent of meeting that was built, and that tent was held together with pegs and hooks. So those connecting pieces, although small, are very, very important. Sometimes they were made out of even silver and gold. The hooks that connected the veils in the Holy of Holies were these very valuable, very important connecting pieces that helped to set up boundaries. The tent pegs that held the Mishkan to the earth prevented it from flying away and stabilized those walls that were set up as, again, boundaries to protect the inner sanctuaries. And connection is also just valuable in terms of how do we come together? How do we, like Abraham, make covenants with others and with the divine? Abraham was the first one to have a circumcision, and that was a covenant with God. In the way I read the Hebrunes as affiliating with the tarot, I see the Vav as being the lover's card because it is about connection, about union, about bringing things together. And I love that Vav is the sixth day of creation, as well as the 6 directions. When we wave the lulav and the etrog in the fall, we wave it in all 6 directions, and it's a very, very magical ceremony that is used by many cultures, including those in the Native American tradition of the east, south, north, and west, as well as above and below, and then silently the center. And in the Sefer Yetzirah, there are these directions that are affiliated with the celestial temple. And the center of the celestial temple is affiliated with the letter Tav. So this all fits together in some beautiful way, that although we have some struggle going on here with the 8 of arrows, it is a struggle that is mostly inside of us. It's the outside world may be challenging, but we have all the resources we need here. That it's time to travel through whatever gateway or portal we're heading toward. And we need to be humble in order to do that. We may need to duck our head in order to get through that doorway. That it's important to remember that divinity is with us regardless. And that even if we're having challenges with the idea of how this is going to come out, even if we're afraid of judgment, and even if we have this unseen part, this hidden, mysterious, moon-like quality, that we know that in the end it will come to connection, that we will have the ability to connect with the divine, with ourselves, possibly with another as well. So as we come through that doorway, we should move forward, even if it's a struggle, with our lantern shining in front of us. Follow that river, follow that source, and will bring us to connection. We'll find the others that we need in order to move forward into our next iteration on the other side of that gateway. So for those of you who chose the 8 of arrows and struggle today, this has been your reading. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and also check out the link to learning more about the Hebrunes and purchasing a set for yourself if you're so inclined. And I will look forward to seeing you here next time. Happy May! Hello, card number 2. Those of you who chose the 4 of arrows, let's take a look here. It's the card that says rest on it. And you can see this person is lying on the ground as if they are dead. But if you look closely, you'll see that all 4 arrows have missed them. That they are lying here. They don't appear to be wounded. They appear to be resting. The traditional Four of Swords is a knight lying on their tomb taking rest. And look above here. We have this butterfly that has emerged and is flying free. And I see this as a symbol of the spring, a symbol of this time to take rest as need be and find your wings. If you've been feeling attacked or oppressed of some sort, it's time to take a little bit of rest and allow yourself that ability to be liberated from work, perhaps. Maybe you've been working too hard. It's time to take some rest. So we're going to pull out some Hebrunes. I'm going to set this off to the side right here. We'll pull out some Hebrunes today to see what further messages we get. At the top, we have the letter Mem. In the center, we have the letter Tav. And at the bottom, we have the letter Lamed. And the way I read these is the top letter is our current situation. The center letter is our challenges or fears, and the lower letter is the outcome. So as we look at the top letter, we have the letter Mem. And the letter Mem is a mother letter of the Sefer Yetzirah. There are three mother letters, creation elements, and this one is water, Mayim Chaim. It's the mother letter of water. It corresponds to the wet season, often seen as the winter. In our case, certainly where I am, it's wet here in the winter. And it is about transformation, and I love that with the butterfly here. Water is the element through which we transform. And cleansing as well. A mikveh is a ritual cleansing bath that we might take. And rest fits in perfectly with this. It is affiliated with the womb in the body, the belly in the body, and it is seen to be a womb, something that is about gestation. It is correlating with the 40 weeks of the gestation in the human body. It is the gematria, the number 40. But there are so many other gestations that happen with the number 40 in Torah. There are the 40 years in the wilderness that begin after the liberation from Mitzrayim. There are the 40 days of rain that come during the flood of Noah. And there are the 40 days on Sinai that Moses goes up to receive Torah at near Shavuot. So we're coming right into that time of year. So there are these different gestation periods that we run into that have the number 40 affiliated with them. Mem is also affiliated with the prophetess Miriam, who is an important figure, one of the early prophetesses and priestesses in the Torah, the sister of Moshe. She is so connected with water. She was the one who put Moses in the river Nile and guided him to be found by the Pharaoh's daughter. She was the one who, when they passed through the Red Sea, inspired all the women to sing and dance on the other side as we came through that watery passage. And she was the one with whom is affiliated a magical well that followed the people throughout the wilderness in that 40-year travel. Miriam is this very powerful female figure, one of the very few that is named in the Torah. She carried with her so much power, so much ability to see ahead and to speak the truth. So the Mem is affiliated with water, that amniotic fluid in which we all gestate for our 40 weeks or so before we are born. And also the wateriness of emotion, possibly the grief that we endure as we are struggling, maybe when we need rest. And that's our situation right now. We are in this gestation period, this 40-week period of time, this 40 days on Sinai when Moshe went up to receive the Torah. We are in this waiting period, and that's hard, but rest is so important. And transformation comes through that 40-day, 40-week, 40-year period. The central letter is the letter that corresponds to our concerns or fears in the situation, and we have the letter Tav. And Tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It represents a seal or a signature on something that is coming to an end. So there may be some concern around whatever is coming to an end in the near future. These gestations can feel really eternal, and then when they come to an end, it's quite calamitous. And if anybody's ever been present at a birth, you can see how intense they can be. So there may be some fear around the birth, a fear around the end of whatever transformation is taking place. I mean, when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and rests for its requisite period of time, does it know it's going to come out a butterfly? Is that transition frightening or challenging? Maybe butterflies are not humans, and so we don't have the same emotional component, but we are humans, and we do think an awful lot about what's going to happen next instead of staying with what is. And I see that rest card is telling us it's time to just rest where we are and not be too concerned about what's coming out on the other end, what ending is coming. Tav corresponds to the moon in the sky. It is the letter that rules over the moon in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. So we have this mystery that we don't quite see clearly. The moon is affiliated with the unknown. And maybe that's part of the fear that's coming here. We don't get to see. And there's a little bit of shadow self that we have to endure as we spend time with ourselves in rest. When we take time to slow down, perhaps all those things start bubbling up, those shadow parts of ourselves. I've taken the liberty of affiliating many of the Hebrew letters with patriarchs and matriarchs, and I affiliate Tav with the patriarch Avraham, because Avraham was a person who left his home and transitioned out into the world to find himself. He did his shadow work. He made covenants with many of the tribes and people that he encountered in the wilderness as he traveled along. Avraham was someone who would come to an area and find the name of the deity, the name of the divine where he was, and set up an altar to that divine and unify it. It helped for people to understand that there are many facets of the divine and yet only one God. He also would dig a well, going back to the Mem, and he would strike up a covenant with whoever was the landholder at that time. There are numerous occasions in which Avraham is said to have made a covenant with someone, and he was the first one to circumcise himself and made a covenant with the divine. So that Tav speaks to those covenants, and it speaks to those transitions, and it speaks to the finality of a situation. And so, of course, we're concerned. Of course, there's some fear around that. But what we know about our situation is that there is a gestation happening, and there will be a transformation that takes place. Perhaps a cleansing, perhaps some kind of mikveh, be it metaphorical or actual. A ritual cleansing that will happen, and we will be transformed like this butterfly. And our final outcome letter, given the current circumstances, is the letter Lamed. And the letter Lamed is the letter that begins the word heart, lev. Lev, that part of our body that pumps the blood throughout all of our limbs and also helps to guide us in a way that maybe the mind is a little bit less able to if we're thinking too hard. Lev is a connecting letter as well. It is a letter that reaches up above the line in Hebrew, and so some say it is that which is aspiring and having hope, reaching above, reaching up to the divine. And I also see it as rooting down into the earth. So there's something about connection with heart here that will come from all of this. It is the letter that is also about learning and teaching. Perhaps we're about to learn something through this period of time, and we need to take in what we need to take in and release what isn't serving us. The Lamed corresponds to the intestines in the body, which is that digestive organ which discerns what is important and what isn't, and absorbs nutrients that are healthy and excretes nutrients that are not helpful. So during this period of rest, we are doing that work of discernment. We're taking the time that we need to discern what is useful and what is not, both in terms of information as well as physical intake. In the way that I correspond each of the Hebrunes to a tarot card, I see the Lamed as corresponding to the Star card, which is that card which is about hope. It's about reaching up with hope and aspiration and optimism. So as we come through this transition time of the gestation, the mayim, the water, the mikvah, the cleansing, even if we are concerned with whatever is going to come to an end, even if it's mysterious to us and we can't quite understand what it's going to be, we can trust that in the end we will have that ability to discern, we'll have that ability to learn something from our situation and reach up with hope, reach up for connection with divinity, reach up with heart. And we have this heart here. And with regards to our rest, we're in this position of resting right now. We're in this time where we need to take the rest. We need to take time to gestate what it is we're gestating so that that transformation can occur and that we can then fly free like this butterfly here. So this month of May is this time of gestation for you if you've chosen this card, and I hope this reading has been helpful for you. If it has, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will look forward to seeing you here next time. If you're interested in learning more about the Hebrunes or purchasing a set for yourself, you can find links in the comment section below. Thank you. Hello, card number 3, the Nine of Bows. Those of you who have chosen this card today, it says respect. And the Nine of Bows, or the Nine of Wands, is traditionally known as the wounded warrior. Is somebody who's been through a lot and is now a little bit maybe hyper-vigilant. Maybe somebody who is, I don't know if they're afraid, but they're definitely wary about folks coming toward them. Let's take a look a little bit closer at this guy. You can see that he's got antlers coming out of his head, which is a protection element in many cultures. And in the back, he's taken those bows and he has made himself a shelter. And you can see he's got a bow on the string ready to release here. He's got a variety of protective amulets on his body and looking quite fierce, hiding behind the plant life here. So perhaps you've chosen this because you are feeling a little bit vulnerable or have been injured and are now wanting the respect that you deserve, which makes complete and total sense. I'm going to set our fellow off to the side here, and we're going to pull out 3 Hebrunes to talk about what May has in store for you today. At the top, we have the letter Kaf. In the center, we have the letter Samech. Oof. And at the bottom, we have the letter Lamed. Okay. All right. So, the letter Kaf, so the way I'm reading these, the top letter is our current situation. The central letter is the letter that represents our concerns or challenges or fears. And the bottom letter is the letter that is the outcome given our current circumstances. And at the top we have the letter Kaf. And the letter Kaf is said to be the palm of a hand or the sole of a foot. And it can be seen as an exchange, a giving and receiving. It is the binary transformation of wealth and poverty in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, which talks about the letters. And so there is a certain amount of exchange here, giving and receiving, wealth and poverty. And also it's all about power. So this is perfect for the letter here, for the card of respect here, this wounded warrior. There's been some struggle with power. It is the first letter of the word koach, which means power or strength. And it is also the first letter of the word keter, which means crown. So there is some challenge, I guess, perhaps with giving and receiving or some sort of power here. Given that we have the respect card here, the 9 of bows, I'm guessing that there has been some sort of oppression or some sort of challenge here. And it has caused you to tap into your power, to cause you to bolster up your strength. The Kaf is the letter that is affiliated with the sun in the sky. It is the letter that rules over the sun in the sky, which is our source energy and essential to life, but it can also be oppressive. I think there is a certain amount of, again, power associated with the sun, that source of power that is here on our planet. So whatever we're doing here to protect ourselves, it has caused us to, again, become stronger, to bolster up our strength. Often the Kaf is connected to the Shekhinah, the wings of Shekhinah particularly, that is sheltering us maybe from the sun. It is sometimes seen as the top of the sukkah, that dwelling place that we create in the fall time. Interestingly, he seems to have a little tiny sukkah here in the background. He's created himself a shelter. And so this is just a perfect connection here with this card, that we've got this, the wings of the Shekhinah dwelling, sheltering over our dwelling place, protecting us from the sun, and the palm of Shekhinah lifting us up as we are protecting ourselves and becoming stronger. In my correspondence with the traditional tarot cards, I see Kaf as corresponding to the Strength card. And the Strength card, if you know it, is the picture of a young woman who is wearing a crown of flowers on her head, and she has the infinity loop above her head, like the divine, and she is closing the mouth of a lion with her hands. So there's something about strength here that we are tapping into, as I said, to protect ourselves. And that's perfect, because here we have in the center the letter Samech. And Samech is the letter that corresponds to protection, being surrounded by a protective boundary. So our challenge or our concern here is, how do we create protective boundaries? The Samech is the letter that in the Paleo Hebrew was a thorn, and you can see a little vestigial thorn here up on the upper left of it, but it looked like a thorn in the Proto-Hebrew. It is said that in the ancient times, folks would plant thorn hedges around their properties to protect their homes and to protect their livestock. And so this idea of being surrounded with protection is inherent in the letter Samech. The letter Samech is also about transitions and cycles and circles and spirals. And so the spiralineal concept of time comes into play here. So maybe we're afraid of how things are going to play out as the wheel turns. We need to set up appropriate boundaries to be surrounded with protection, but also be open to whatever comes in next. The Samech is connected to support. And so we're looking for support here. We're looking for protection and support. And we maybe have shut ourselves off to that. Maybe there's been a fear around not getting appropriate support from those in our lives. And that has closed us off, because although a boundary can be very important and essential when we have been wounded, it is also possible to shut ourselves up behind a boundary so much so that we have no connection with the outside world. And Samech has that affiliation in it, with both protection but also support, and surrounded with even with a gentle hug that we are wanting, that we want to be connected to others. And so we have this concern. Perhaps we are concerned about not having adequate support, and so we set up a boundary that's a little too hard. We can set up walls, but we need to make doorways in them so that people are able to get in and out. And those are important facets here in this reading, as we've got this wounded character here who is wanting the respect, the innate human respect that they deserve, and also needs to find connection that is supportive and healthy. Samech is the foundation of agitation in the Sefer Yetzirah, so it is agitation both to positive action, that because we have wounds, we need to take positive action to protect ourselves, but also agitation that can be irritable and cause us to be a little thorny with that Samech thorn part. So just being aware right now that when we're coming into our strength and power in order to protect ourselves, that it is important to set up good boundaries, but it's also important to not set them up so strong that we can't let others in, and that we're not so irritable that we can't connect. And that brings us to our final letter. Down here at the bottom, we have the letter Lamed, which is the outcome letter of our reading. Lamed is the one letter that reaches above the line. So it's about reaching up for connection with divinity, but also with others. It is the letter that begins the word Lev, which means heart. So as we reach up with heart, that is the outcome here, and I think that's beautiful. Lamed is also about learning and teaching, limud velamed, which consists of taking in information and also letting information out. So we need to take in what we need to learn and teach what we need to teach out of the situation. The lamed corresponds to the intestines in the body, and I love that this lamed looks a little bit like an intestinal tract where we take in food and digest it and excrete what is no longer necessary. And so that's part of it, is taking in what it is we need to learn and discerning what it is that is important for us to keep, and letting go of that which is not helpful. So as we're coming through this time of having been wounded, we need to learn to set appropriate boundaries and let go of situations and people that have harmed us. Lamed corresponds, in my understanding of it, to the star card in tarot, which is about aspiration, about reaching up with hope and optimism. So as we come through this really difficult time, having been wounded, needing to hold on to our power, our koach, and set up appropriate boundaries, it also gives us the freedom then to have that boundlessness, that connection with heart, connection to the divine, connection to ourselves, and connection to others as well, if appropriate. Lamed is the foundation of action in the Sefer Yetzirah. So we've come through this period of time of agitation, and now it's time to take action, to really reach up to the divine, if no one else, to ask for the connection we need to heal our hearts so that we can reach out in the future and connect better with others. So for those of you who chose the Nine of Bows, the Respect card, this has been your reading. I hope you found it useful. I hope that in May you can find your power and strength, set up appropriate boundaries, and reach up with heart. And that if you did find this reading helpful, you will like and subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about the Hebrunes, you can check out the link below to purchase a set of your own. And I will look forward to seeing you here next time. Happy May!